We are officially recording. Welcome everyone again. Great call out there. Okay, for questions, please drop them in the Q&A section of Zoom. If folks are familiar with how that operates, just at the bottom, we have chat, we have Q&A. If you drop your questions in Q&A, it'll be a lot easier for us to ensure that we're running through them versus all the chat. Please continue the chat and the conversation along the way. Things that you like, we like the thumbs up, we like the reactions to make sure that we are on track. Otherwise, a webinar can be really one-dimensional, and we're hoping to avoid that today. I like starting at the end. I find it's always the best way to start. In my background, I spent a good amount of my career working at LinkedIn, and there was a leader there that shared this context going into any meeting, any webinar, and it really stuck with me. And that is, this meeting, or in this case, this webinar will be a success if. So let's start at the end. Number one, you understand there are multiple paths in evaluating a no-code platform, and you have many forms of help along the way. We'll get into the partner network. We'll get into the resources you have at SmartSuite, all of the online resources. We'll make sure that you're well covered. Two, you understand the basics of building a solution in SmartSuite. It's not challenging. We say this all the time to customers. We intentionally have a low floor here. This is meant to be really easy to get in and start to build. It's like someone gives you a box of Legos. You can figure out how the pieces fit together. However, there's also a very high ceiling. So fair call out here is, once you realize how high that ceiling is, it's quite common for our customers to have that, oh my goodness moment where they feel, I don't know where to start. I don't know if I'll be able to leverage all this capability, this technology that's packed within SmartSuite. And I will be the first to tell you, rest assured, nobody is using 100% of it. We're innovating so quickly here, and there are so many different nuances to the features and functionality that, frankly, probably won't get to all of the buttons in the system or all of the features in using them. Have some confidence in just focusing on your first solution and the basics in building. Third, when you finish the session, I'm hoping that you select your first use case if you have not already, and you start that V1 of your first solution. And I say V1 because our view here is that building in a no-code platform should be very iterative. I always say, don't let perfect get in the way of better. You can probably build something today, within an hour, within half an hour, possibly within 10 minutes, that will help you with a process, a key workflow in your business to improve, to remove some of that manual effort and to move things forward. All right, what we'll cover specifically: point solutions versus platforms. There are definitely differences there. The common paths of no-code platform evaluation. We have learned, so Jeff and myself, and being in this space now for a while, I say hundreds, probably over 1,000 evaluations of tools like a SmartSuite and implementations, what works, what doesn't, where people tend to get stuck along the way. I'll introduce some general SmartSuite terminology to make sure we're all speaking the same language. And then we'll get into the meat of it. So how to build a solution by leveraging, customizing a template. We'll talk about relating data and project managing, two pretty key functionalities of SmartSuite and what makes us unique in the space. And then most importantly, the next steps for you. How do you get going? This is not a solution that creates itself and uses itself. SmartSuite is not a full AI. We have some cool AI capabilities, which we might touch on today. But most importantly, this is the type of technology that you get in and you build something unique for yourself, for your business. So get excited about that. Okay, let's go ahead and jump into first, just touching on that point solutions versus platform before we get into the paths. I'll keep this simple. Point solutions are out there. There are probably hundreds of thousands, and point solutions are meant to solve a specific need. It's a niche type of technology. And what we commonly see with our customers is, depending on if they're small, medium, large, they might have a sizable amount of these point solutions that they're tapping on to do specific things. When you need work done in your business, you have two options. You have technology and you have people. Ideally, they're working together, right? But with point solutions, you might have something like inventory management or a CRM, or even more niche, a marketing campaign technology. And there are thousands of options across every one of those little niches. So the common track, I'd say 10 to 15 years ago, would be to evaluate and purchase these point solutions and try to bolt them together where you are able to. And the problem that companies have found over the years in stacking up 100 plus of these solutions in their tech stack is that they don't often speak to each other. The data shows this, that having these point solutions and trying to connect the dots is a job in itself. So finding a way to leverage a platform instead is a slightly different approach. So instead of building something in-house, instead of buying something out on the market and trying to piece it all together, a platform allows you in a no-code way, no tech experience or knowledge needed, to build these solutions that you need, the workflows that you need, and connect them together within your working ecosystem. So very simply, that's what a platform is. And that's what SmartSuite offers. And that's what we'll touch on today. Okay. Jeff, feel free to interrupt me if you're manning the chat there with anything that you want to call out.
All right. Will do. It looks like they are enjoying your don't let a perfect build get in the way of better. So that's good news.
Good. Yes,
you're dropping some bombs early. I love it.
Many people can resonate with the desire to make something perfect, and just getting something down and moving ahead is when you're not having to go back to developers and say, can you do this? And then wait for weeks or months. You can do this stuff yourself. So what can you add? What additional things? There will always be something new that we can show you, that your peers will show you. Our community, I want to plug it now, is pretty electric. People will jump into it and they get excited about something they're working on or a problem they're looking to solve. And from that, others in the community will say, I just went through that. I tried this. What do you think about that? And people just keep leveling each other up. I like spending time in our community, just seeing what people are building. Cool. Okay, this visual here is, I don't know if you would call it fancy. Jeff and I are not designers by trade. So Jeff and I built this and just trying to get our vision down for what we were experiencing in common customer conversations. On a daily basis, this is 5 to 10 conversations for me with new customers or potential customers where they go, okay, here's where I'm at. Here's the background. I've heard of SmartSuite from one of 10 ways, and now I want to get going. And at that point, perhaps you have tried to embark on the journey of resourcefulness, and we have lots of YouTube videos. Our partners are amazing at producing really good videos. We have plenty of help articles and in-house content. We also have daily office hours. So the resources are abundant. Some folks get to this point and say, I'm a little overwhelmed by all these resources. Can you just help me get on the right track? By either show of hands or comments in the chat here, not unique to SmartSuite, has anyone ever been evaluating a new technology and been trapped in the stuck zone? That's what I like to call it. Stuck zone is you have a problem, you found the technology. Okay, how do I get the wheels on the bus moving? Yeah, we've been there. It's common. And you know what? SmartSuite doesn't solve for everything. When we're looking at potential solutions to tack in here, be it a call recording solution or whatever it might be, we go through the same process. So super familiar with it. And what happens is, if you would like to be resourceful and you go down that track, some people are able to navigate through self-service. They're able to build prototypes and validate if SmartSuite is or is not right for them. And they ultimately go down the track of looping in colleagues. They get excited. They start building a whole bunch of things. And then at some point, they loop us in or they loop a partner in to take it to the next level, right? And they take a lot of pride in that work. And there's nothing wrong with that track. This is a very sticky zone to be in without getting that assistance up front. You hear it every day from customers that a little bit of guidance and consultation up front goes a long way. Most of us don't have a background in database architecture. So even setting up a solution, while very simple, it's important that there are just some simple considerations to set you down the right track so you're not having to rebuild in a week from now, in a month from now. Right. But again, this is meant to be iterative. So just getting your ideas down in the first place helps us to help you visualize what that workflow could be. Okay. Typically people reach out, they're in the stuck zone. They like time with us. We like to think we're very generous with our time. I'm sure some folks here can attest to that. And that's as simple as reach out to us. We are here. We don't charge for our time. It might make sense if you have, depending on your needs, depending on your timelines, it makes sense to go right to a partner. We have a network of over 100 vetted partners in our ecosystem that are brilliant at what they do. And many of them have niches and they've helped solve your problems before, I can assure you. So sometimes that's the right track. Typically helps to start with this onboarding call. And that's when Jeff and all his brilliance comes in. So Jeff, I'll kick it over to you if you'd like to walk through what the journey looks like at that point.
Yeah, that visual was definitely super helpful for understanding what an example scenario could or should look like. But I think the most important things that I'm trying to solve for or understand on that first onboarding call, first and foremost, is the level of knowledge that person has of SmartSuite in and of itself. And so I'll usually ask them to rate on a scale of 1 to 10, where do you think you're at? And it's, we have some folks who are very humble, who will say maybe 4 or 5, and then we get into their workspace and they have cross-solution relationships with roll-ups, advanced formulas, and I realize they're probably closer to a 7. I probably need to pivot, and that's important to understand where they're at because it helps me figure out which path would probably be the right path in that scenario. Rick, would you mind actually sharing that screen? I think it's important to have the visual there as we're talking through it. But the next piece is obviously just going to be understanding what that current state looks like, which I guess piece of technology they're using to address it as of right now, whether that's Excel, some sort of competing platform, helps me understand how they've already tried to approach it at that point and what knowledge they might have of the process in general. And then which use cases are actually able to be applied to this sort of current state or problem. Sometimes it's just one sort of process that addresses it, but sometimes there are 2 connected workflows that we need to consider during that. And then get an idea of ideal state. If we were in a perfect world, what would that look like for you? What would it look like for your stakeholders? Important to know there. And then from there, scope. So users, complexity, whatever sort of phases there might be, and then timelines. We have X deadline for making this happen. And so then we see one of 3 routes that we can go down, where if I feel like somebody has a really good knowledge of SmartSuite, they take an onboarding call because they're tripped up on just one aspect of their build or how to approach it, or if we have any ideas for ways we've seen other innovative customers approach it, self-service is awesome. Especially we have some folks who are really leveraging office hours for everything that they are. Really great resources that we have available to you. But then if we were to take this middle path, and really we determine middle path by if somebody has a good amount of users involved in this actual workflow, they have the desire to understand and better learn SmartSuite so that they can turn around and build additional solutions after this first one. A number of different reasons as to why somebody would go the middle path, but usually we'll start off as that next step with just putting a mutual action plan together, or a map as we call it, and just saying, this is the deadline that we hope to accomplish this by. These are all of the things that we need to consider along the way, whether that be security, whether that be different teams involved in the different needs or requests that they have along the evaluation as well. And then from there, we can go one of 2 ways. The bottom way with SE scoping, we see prototype validation. This is where we're going to have likely 2 to 3 calls. First call is where we're going to actually understand the nitty-gritty details of the workflow itself. And so what we're trying to understand are all the different big rocks of data that are involved, the relationships between those big rocks of data, ways in which we can automate some of the little mundane processes along the way. And then also the sort of look and feel that the folks are trying to get to within the workflows. And then the other route would be platform enablement, in which we'll have working sessions. So if somebody comes to us and they already have a pretty good solution in place in SmartSuite, and they're looking to just refine it and make it picture perfect when they go to present their proof of concept, a few working sessions will usually suffice with somebody on our team. Super helpful because a lot of the people that actually do working sessions here at SmartSuite with our customers are the same folks that will actually be supporting them directly after we gain business buy-in, which is the next step along the way. From there, once we have that proof of concept in place, either it's a prototype that we've built for you and presented and gotten feedback on and up-leveled beforehand, or if we've had numerous working sessions to get to that point, we still have 2 routes that we can go down. So we have onboarding sessions that we conduct with different customers after we gain that business buy-in to actually get to that full working solution, or we can turn around and loop a partner in that's in our ecosystem to provide more hands-on build for you / with you experience in a capacity that we might not be able to get to. From there, as far as exploring new teams and having a kickoff call and developing that relationship, that looks very different along the way. But I think for today's call, Rick, tell me if I'm wrong, I think we're going to focus on how do we get to that first working solution. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I think it is important to show the end path here potentially, because we like getting y'all thinking aspirationally. Our model here is a seat-based model or a user-based model. It is not a solution-based model. In other words, getting that first use case or solution built is key, right? In evaluating if SmartSuite is right for you. Beyond that, Then we see customers that are starting to tack on other solutions with tangential workflows. Okay, I have my CRM in place. That's great. I'm managing these things. Is it inventory tracking? Is it marketing related? Is it product related? And they start to bolt in all these other solutions that are then connected together. The important thing there is we work with a lot of one-person shops, but we also work with a lot of mid to larger size companies and enterprises. If you have additional stakeholders in your business or other people that would have some experience in what you're building, of course, you're going to want to understand their functional requirements, right? What do they need to see? And most importantly, and where I think SmartSuite shines is, what do they not need to see? You probably have people in mind with your workflows, certain stakeholders, salespeople, marketers, product folks, whoever, executives, that you only want them to see one thing and one specific thing. We're really good at that. So getting them to come in and only understand what they need to understand and absorb that, it actually makes the path to learning and absorbing in SmartSuite much easier because we're not having to train and educate people on an entirely new tool. The builders, of course, most likely you all here that have joined, are the ones that will want to get in and understand the nuances and the capabilities. But the people that you're bringing in to experience and participate in a way into SmartSuite, they probably don't need the full rundown of how things work. Like to talk about the end and getting you think aspirationally, because we do have customers, I'm seeing them, that have 30, 40 plus solutions that are essentially operating their whole business off of SmartSuite. And that connectivity becomes beautiful because they're linking records together and everything is harmonious. All right. So starting at the end is helpful. Okay. Would love some comments there. Chat got a bit quiet, maybe because you're also enamored by what Jeff was just sharing here in this journey. You also probably have gone through this with tools before, whether it's been articulated this way or not. Any kind of thumbs up or affirmations that you're familiar with this track? Maybe you're somewhere along that journey. Yeah. Okay. I got a thumb up there. Okay. That's helpful. Thank you to who that was, that floating thumb. I'm going to take a step back here and now orient you to SmartSuite. Okay. Mark raised a hand, and Mark, I'd love to, if you want to drop I don't know if that was an amen there, or drop a chat in, but yeah, feel free. So questions again in the Q&A. I see some that are coming in here. We'll jump into those in a moment. And then in the chat, I'm just keeping an eye on. Avi, would you like to release the poll, please? What we're going to do here, this is a very much of a 90s reference. If anyone remembers Goosebumps Adventures, the books back in the day, one of my faves, where you could choose your own adventure. We're going to take that track today. So instead of showing you something that we pre-built, we're going to proof this out and just how easy it is to leverage our templates, which we have poured a lot of effort, knowledge, guidance, feedback into. Okay, it looks like single project is winning so far. So we're going to go ahead. Jeff in a second here is going to show you how to download a template, jump in and customizing it, because there's tends to be very little need to build from scratch here. And we'll hopefully prove that. So the question is, which solution should we explore today? Now, I'm going to let this keep running as folks are chiming in. I think it looks like a runaway for single project, Jeff. So if you want to get that one queued up as you're going in. Okay.
You got it.
All right. Quick orientation to SmartSuite. What you're looking at here is your SmartSuite workspace. And the workspace is essentially a place that houses all of your homepage, all of your information, all of your solutions. It is usually the focal point of where you go to start your day in SmartSuite. And I always like to call out on the left-hand side when I say we have heaps of resources. We really do. So the community, free academy courses to help you up level. We've got certifications on the back end of that if you want to test your knowledge. Jeff will touch on the template gallery here in a moment, but that's really where most folks end up driving and getting started. Showing you here, though, this is your SmartSuite workspace. These little boxes down below here represent your solutions. A solution would be a workflow or a critical segment of data that would help power those workflows. Okay, so think about your CRM. Think about what would normally be a point solution, and you're having all these housed here and able to connect them within your workspace. Very easy to favorite those, bring those common ones up top that you would normally use. Jeff's going to show you an even better way of managing your favorite views and some of those here in a moment. Okay, basic orientation there. Jeff, kicking it over to you to jump into the single project solution is the winner.
Let's do it. Okay. Give me a moment here. Beautiful. You see my screen all right, Rick? Everybody else?
Yeah, good to
Looking
go.
at good morning, Jeff, with the very serious photo that I uploaded here for some reason. But as you get in here, everybody's workspace is going to look very similar in terms of the fact that you have your solution lists with a handful of different favorited solutions that you might have here queued up at the top. To access our template gallery, which I believe we wanted to highlight first before we hopped in, you can do two different ways by clicking template gallery here on the left-hand side, or when you go into add new solution, you can choose start with template. And we have many different options. It was hard for me to boil it down to just three that we could potentially dive into today, but I wanted to make sure that we had a good kind of plan for each of them. And the context behind single project, I think, is you get into these templates, typically folks that I've worked with, they'll say, I really like this schema, or I really like this makes sense for me as opposed to some of the other options, but I need to refine it and tailor it to exactly what it is that I'm doing. And perfect. Let's talk about exactly how we can approach that. First and foremost, something that I do often is I will open up a dashboard view. I'll open up another view and just go ahead and add and this is one of my favorite widgets that we have in dashboard view, the data schema widget. You can change the settings so that it is only showing what is happening within a specific solution, or you can look at a view of what's happening across the entire workspace. You can choose whether you want it to be only showing relationship fields or all fields. In this case, I'm just going to show all fields, and I'm going to limit it to this specific solution so that we can assess it a little bit better and figure out what we're missing and what we probably could or should trim down. Give me just one moment here. I typically like to focus on three different layers when I'm going through an onboarding call or a working session. Focus on the data layer first, which is what we're going to talk about today. And so the 4 steps to approaching the data layer from our perspective is, let's look at the apps, tables, whatever you prefer to call them. We call them apps here at SmartSuite, but which apps need to be added and which apps need to be removed. And so we like to think of these as the big rocks of data. And from there, it's naming conventions for apps and fields. What do we want to call them? What does the business call them? What do we want to center around so that we're all speaking the same language? Minor detail, but incredibly important as you look to get your folks adopting this specific tool. And then the next piece is linked relationships. So we have all of the different big rocks of data. How do they relate to each other? Is it one-to-many? Is it one-to-one? Is it many-to-many? A lot of different ways that can look. And then the last piece is what fields can we add or remove? And as we look forward, the next steps would be the logic layer, as I call it, where you introduce automations, formulas, rollups, et cetera, to enrich that experience, make it a little bit easier to use. And then the last piece is the user interface layer. What kind of views and dashboards can we bring to the table to make it a little bit easier for potentially non-technical or highly technical folks to get in and get value out of the tool immediately? But like I said, we're going to focus on the data layer first. And let's talk about the apps that need to be added or removed. In this case, we have our single project. So big rocks of data. I think we have a pretty good schema here as far as project overview, right? If we look at project overview specifically, we can see it's just one project because, like the solution clarifies here at the top, it is for one single project, but we see the relationship to deliverables, milestones, tasks, status reports, and team coming from the staffing app that we have over here on the right. And so I think that all of these would be incredibly valuable outside of, if I'm hopping in here, I'm not really sure if status reports are what I need exactly for my group. And so while some folks might be able to find value out of it, what I'm going to do just for the purpose of this call is go ahead and just delete the app. I don't necessarily need that, but what I do need in this example scenario is the ability for people to submit change requests. And so I want to make sure that people can either, whether that looks like a form or just creating a record and tagging somebody in it, I want to make sure that I have a separate place for people to be able to throw suggestions our way. And so I'm just going to create an additional app called change requests. Awesome. So as we look here, we have project overview. I'll go back into data schema. And we see our different apps at play. Awesome. We do not have the change requests hasn't populated here for app one. We don't have the linked relationships in place yet, but we will definitely be getting there in just a moment. What should we be naming these things? And so this is important for people to, again, understand exactly what it is they're looking at. And so in this case, we have project overview, we have project tasks, we have milestones, deliverables, staffing, change requests. Let's say we don't really use the term milestones, we actually use phases. And so I'll often get the question of how do we track phases while there's a milestones application there. I say that's exactly what the milestones app is. And each record represents whatever it is that we've named each of these apps. And what I mean by that is we have an app for project tasks. Each record is itself a task. And so if we prefer to have things referred to as phases instead of milestones, we can come in here and just change exactly that. And we've just impacted what that represents. Similarly, within project overview, I really liked the schema and the setup in single project. It made sense to me. So I don't necessarily just want to use it for the single project. I might want to use it for projects just in general. And so I'll go ahead and change these names as well. Project tracker, we'll call it. If I could spell, that would probably help. Beautiful. And then the next layer is going to be, how should they be related? And in this case, we created this new change requests application. We see it's taken a moment for the system to pick up on this brand new app, but we want to have a relationship between change requests and projects. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another linked record field type. And if you're not familiar with the linked record field type, it is potentially the most important field type that we have here, because this is what connects the tables or applications of data that we have within your solutions. And so in this case, we're in projects. I'd like to connect directly to change requests. I would like it to be able to link to multiple records because there might be multiple change requests for one specific project. Perfect. We can get into the advanced settings another time, but if you'd like to filter down to just specific change request options or specific people that you can link over to, really valuable there on that front. And I will just go ahead and add the field. As you see, it automatically changes it to link to change requests. If we want to be particular about the name and just call it change requests, that works as well. It doesn't impact the experience that you have in creating those change requests and relating them directly to the project. The last piece is going to be the fields that we want to add or remove. And so let's focus on the change requests app. And I'm hoping that, you know what, let me give this a quick refresh. Let's see if that makes a difference for me. Beautiful. There we go. Cool. We could probably keep some of these. Maybe we change this assign to field to submitter, the person who is submitting this change request. We know that we have that link to projects already created here because we created that within our projects application. What are the other fields of data that we want to show here as well? I think that a currency field is one that I see really often, and it's just a dollar amount really that we want to clarify. Budget requested in this case for this specific change request, how much budget will be required to make that happen. And the next piece is going to be just a standard text area field for people to give a request detail. Perfect. We'll keep it really simple here, but this is essentially the order in which I like to approach this. Like I said, sometimes people will want to create a form view for specific requests just because it creates a really easy sort of workflow for people to be able to go through, to be able to say, I'm the submitter, how much is being requested, what is the detail about it? We could set default values for status to where when somebody submits it, it automatically goes into a needs to be reviewed status. And then another note here for the form view is that we can change the name that appears for the specific field while it doesn't actually change the name of the field within our application itself. So instead of title, we'd say name of request. Again, if I could type, that would be helpful. And we have now just created our first form. Again, it all starts with observing where we're at as far as the data schema. What do we have? What do we need? What do we not need? How do we relate those things to each other? What should we name them? And last, what bits of information do we need that are tied to each of these big rocks of data? This is just one example. Obviously, we had two others that we could show today as well, but I hope it's at least just inspiring for how we can approach the next use case that you're thinking about within SmartSuite. Appreciate it.
Yeah. That's awesome, Jeff. If you could jump back to the grid view, I'll give one other way to think about this and bring in the terminology full cycle. Solutions represent your workflows or your stores of data. Each of these tabs at the top are apps, and an app would be representative of unique pieces of data that power that workflow. These data points we call records. So each of in traditional sheets or Excel, you'd call them rows. Records would be listed along the left-hand side there. And then each record would have unique characteristics about it. And those we call field types. We have over 44 different field types. And that just allows you to categorize those unique characteristics of the data point. As in, an email address should not be a text field. As in, if you need to assign something to someone for ownership or attach files and images, these shouldn't live simply in just a block and all be considered the same. So we've quite a robust list of field types, as you can see there. And that just allows you to categorize your characteristics more effectively for each of these data points. Once you start listing out the records, then it's about building the relationships together. Relationships would be how you're relating one record to another, potentially across apps, potentially across solutions. At that point, you're then wondering, how do you visualize this in a different way, depending on the use case? And that is when you can take this, Jeff, if you click on the view types, that's when you can take the same data. And if you don't want to see it in a grid form, maybe it makes sense if it's a lot of address data on customers to visualize it in a map form. Maybe you want to put it on a timeline or in a calendar view if it's a marketing calendar, or in a Kanban view if you're project managing it through. So you can see many different ways there to visualize the data. And then the last bit is, how do you start automating things that need to happen? We can get really fun with that. But the short and sweet of our automation engine, Jeff, if you want to click into that, is that it works on when this happens, then do that. So there's a trigger and there's an action. The trigger would represent when a status, for example, gets to a certain point, when a record matches a certain condition, when someone submits a form. Think about all the times in your business when you're doing manual work or your team are doing manual work, and take a step before that. So that's basically what the trigger is. Okay, we have to fill all this out, or we need to make sure that our executives are approving, or a certain person approves that. Okay, how do you know when it's their turn to do that? When we get to the approval stage. So that could be when status goes to approved, trigger a notification, a Slack, an email, or whatever that goes out to that person in order to operate. So I may be oversimplifying, but it starts with picking a use case as a solution, understanding all the pieces of data that help power that are important to track, and those are represented as apps. Apps should be the points of data, or the records that go in those should have unique characteristics. So that's why you're not in a relational database model. That's why you're not putting projects together with contacts and accounts, because each of those have unique characteristics that you would want to have documented and understand about it. Once you have that all in there, then you're adding the fields to list out all those characteristics. You are potentially leveraging different views to visualize it in different ways. You're then automating some of the work as you see fit. And ultimately, that is how you power a workflow in SmartSuite. Not to mention, when you tap on other people that it's their work to do, like I said, the permissioning that we have is about as granular as you can get in the industry. We allow you to limit people to only see certain solutions, only see certain apps, only see certain records, only see certain fields. So we can get very granular in ensuring that when you bring somebody into an experience in SmartSuite, that they only see what they need to see.
And when we talk about all of what you should or could be considering, obviously could be potentially overwhelming as well. There are a lot of things to consider, and I'll just highlight again really quickly, because I would love for this to land in that the very first thing that I always encourage people to focus on is that data layer. Do I have clearly articulated with the right names all of the different big rocks of data that I have in there? What are the different little bits of data that I need about each of these rocks? And then focusing on the logic, the automations. I'll have a lot of people approach me asking about specific automations before they have the data layer in there. And sometimes it's just to evaluate and confirm, hey, do you have the ability to do X? But when you start to build your automations before you have your entire data layer in place, you find that there are other considerations. And so you saw one of the automations for when a record matches conditions, those conditions might change the moment that you add other bits of data in there. And again, just highlighting, focus on data layer, tap on our shoulder here once you want to start talking about the logic and interface layer, but it all starts with that cleanliness of data.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, plenty covered. I say this somewhat jokingly, but not really. We've covered, I think, about 10 to 15% of what you can do in SmartSuite. This was meant to start to spark some ideas on how you just get moving forward. Like I said, that V1 is within 5 minutes, 10 minutes of you just focusing in on that one use case and starting to build. Please do not get overwhelmed with all of the capabilities. We are here as your Sherpas to guide you to as much complexity as you like. It does help for sure to have that hand in that guidance. So we can now dig into questions, answers. I don't know if there are specific things that folks wanted to cover beyond that. Like I said, we can get into certain bits of functionality if it might be helpful. Just wanted to provide that overview top to bottom of how you get rolling in SmartSuite. Okay, questions here. I'm going to go just from the top, the earliest. So Jan asked, and Jeff, feel free to chime in on any of these, or Avi, if you'd like to answer. Can build a solution process for when these things happen, then I can start working on this next thing. So I believe you're referring to what would normally be called dependencies. If this happens, then do this. We have more pointed dependency functionality rolling out very soon, sooner than you might think. But there are definitely ways to achieve this through automations, and we have customers that are doing this now live in the solution. So when these things happen, then trigger some action to the next person. Or when this happens, then create a record. Or when a certain time in the week hits on a Monday, create this checklist of items that somebody needs to go through to manage their week. So absolutely, we can do that. Gorkum, a couple questions here. I love that they're getting right into the features here. How can I adjust time on automation? I set up automation with date. However, it goes out at 12 a.m. at night. Jeff, is that something that you want to speak to or show there?
Yeah, I believe you can actually clarify time within or at a scheduled time. So you're saying it goes out at midnight, but within the actual trigger condition rule sets, we have the ability to repeat it every week or so. You can clarify a specific day of the week you'd like it to run. And then the last piece is the time that you'd like it to run at. And it's set automatically to the local time zone that you're accessing SmartSuite from. And so right now it's in central time for me, but that would be how you'd address that.
Yeah, perfect. Gorkum, next question. Do you have any integration with web chat, with text message? And if you do, who is it? I'd say the messaging functionality with Twilio is probably the tightest integration that we have in terms of SMS. But leveraging, I can't say good enough things about Zapier and Make.com, formerly Integromat, as really tight partners that you can essentially integrate anything that's not native very simply. And I'm fairly certain that they both have web chat integrations. Jim, are there any database limitations on number of records? Jim, I'll actually show you. This is something that from the former company Jeff and I were at, just a little bit of a different take. And I think refreshingly transparent here. If you go to our website, you can see the plan options. So the short answer is yes. We have 4 plan types. We have a free forever plan. We, for the most part, we do not feature gate. And quite proud of this actually, in that most of our functionality is available across all plan types, even the free plan types. And that allows you to go and build and create, especially if there's only a few folks that are involved or a few solutions, just about anything using that free solution. But from a record limit perspective, we have listed here per solution, 1,000, 5,000, 50,000, 200,000. Currently, I can tell you without dropping too much of a hint, in the pretty near future, there will be some increases in limits that I think folks will be very pleased with. So those are current limitations on records per solution. That being said, the way that we architected SmartSuite, or our CTO, our founders, our CEO and CTO, it's architected in a way because you can link records and reference data across solutions that you don't need to put everything in one solution. we rarely have customers that are running into these limits because you can just simply have information in another solution and you could be accessing that. You could be building dashboards and reporting all that across solutions. So it's really unique to SmartSuite in the way that we do that. And I won't say that makes these records irrelevant, but it definitely helps in being able to spread your data out intelligently. Okay, Jan, looks like we answered your question there. Jeff, when creating a new app, is there any way to create it without the default fields added, which then causes us to delete them? Jeff, our Jeff, do you want to speak to how you would normally approach that?
Yeah, as of right now, you do just have to manually delete those fields. Those are some of our strongest and most common field types. And so we usually throw that in there just to inspire, is begin building out from scratch. But it's good feedback. And if you'd like to have them not auto-populate or be able to choose whether you want them to or not to auto-populate, definitely give us that feedback on Canny. Yeah. Super helpful for us to hear.
Yeah, I'll say it again. Canny is our external facing product roadmap, and it's largely powered by you all. So we have folks that go in and lay out their product requests. Our product team, our CEO or CTO are on this every day, very often. And when you're upvoting and you're commenting on the things that are top priority to you, we hear you loud and clear. We hear it every day. Much of the innovation that we have is coming from what you all are asking for. We really do feel like we're listening as intently as we possibly can. And a little hack there, Jeff, would be just to create a solution one time where you strip everything out, save that as a template for yourself. Just call it blank template. And then you can just duplicate that anytime that you want to start from scratch on something. Cool. Tasha, I work in research. I need to have different stages in my work. Any recommendations for a way to do this? If you're referencing stages of projects, for example, then I would say using a status field would be a simple and effective way to do that. Using a status field is completely customizable. You can have as many statuses as you like. You can call them whatever you want, change the colors however you want. So not sure if that's answering it, but using a status fields for the projects that you have, calling them stages and having levels of those stages, you can then also group and sort by those stages, and you can visualize it in a Kanban view by stage or by status so that you can basically be managing your work through those stages.
I've also seen customers do this really creative way of actually having projects and tasks in place, but the true tasks are actually in a checklist field that lives in the tasks app. And so the name of all of the task records are actually just concatenated, auto-generated names that string together the phase and then the name of the project. And then all of the specific tasks that fall into that phase live within that checklist field type. That's helpful because sometimes folks will have 50 different tasks for this specific project. Okay, cool. How many phases are there? There's 5. And then there's 10 tasks for each of those 5 phases. You can have the 5 records that are in the tasks application represent each of those phases with just a simple line of text, due date, and the assigned to field within the checklist field for clarifying what the tasks are.
Awesome. Said. Jan, how will I know when your new dependencies is available? You'll hear about it. I think we're up to Peter, our CTO, I know is on this call. And Peter, what would you say we're roughly 15 to 20 pings that you get or that we get daily about this? I can say without sharing too much, it's not just in conception, it's in development. So progressing well on that. I think there's actually design work that's happened as well. Our team is moving. There's a lot of complexity when it comes to doing dependencies and doing it right. That's step 1. Step 2 would be able to use a Gantt view, which would be the next view that we'll be introducing to tap into some of those dependencies. So you'll certainly hear about it. There'll be a big song and dance. We're excited for that to come. What else here? Gorkum, I'll answer your quick one. And then Leanne, I want to read through this as I'm digesting. But Gorkum's question, can you please show how your approval feature works? Jeff, you just want to share again how you could set up an approval process using kind of stages and what that could look like, simple through an automation?
Yeah, a lot of different ways to approach this. I don't know if I want to share my screen and dive into how to build it while we're live here on the call, but automation and then either 1 or 2 status fields would probably be super helpful for automating the approval process. And so I've seen some folks with the case of having 2 status fields where you have the, let's say, project status, and then you have the approval status. The moment that you bring the approval status into a certain condition, maybe it's needs review, you can fire off an automation that notifies whoever's listed as the reviewer in the assigned to field. And so once, the automation would be when a record is updated, and when it's updated from any to needs review, then you go ahead and send a notification, whether that's email, Slack, Microsoft Teams, Gmail, Outlook, completely up to you on that front. And then you can create maybe a view or a dashboard in which you've filtered out all of the different records by where the reviewer has any of the current user. So when that person gets a link to where they need to go to, they're automatically going to a list of all of the different approvals that are in their queue, if you will. And once they change that status back from needs review to reviewed, you can create another automation that reminds that person who actually submitted or moved the initial review into needs review to be able to say, been reviewed, let us know what you think. And you can provide feedback and have the ongoing conversation by mentioning each other within the comments section of each of the records. I hope it's helpful, just speaking to it. Happy to find time to show you what that looks like later if you'd like.
Yeah, good stuff. Gorka wants to see a sample. Absolutely. Yeah, request that you follow up just for the sake of time, and we can show you. We can create a little Loom video, or we can connect directly, walk you through that. Leanne, your question is an interesting one, and it's one that we've solved in a number of ways. So Leanne's question is, if I were to summarize this, needing a form that auto-populates. Okay, so you're sending a form to a list of people, let's say in an app, and there's information that you know about those people already. You're essentially asking them to verify if this information is correct or if there's been a change. Let's say it's a phone number. Okay. The way that we would do that is actually by linking records across apps. So when you create a form, you're able to pull in that information and have them verify. So there are ways that you can look up data using field types in SmartSuite. You essentially be leveraging those into a form. So the short answer is yes. Again, I'll say, like with Gorkum, please reach out to us directly and we can walk you through this. A little more complicated in the way that you set it up, but we are able to do that. And then your piece on the end about updating it back is you just use an automation. So when the form comes in to say if something is different or if a field changes, then you would go ahead and update.
And Leanne, another note here, we don't exactly have the experience of send a form, have it auto-populated based on the information that's already in that record. Fillout.com, one of our partners, has that ability to make that happen, but you can also create a dashboard view experience with automated, maybe it's every 3 months because it's quarterly that you need people to address this. You can create automations that send people to a dashboard where it shows their specific record of information for whatever updates, and maybe you have a yes, no field for reviewed and not reviewed. That clears out on a quarterly basis too, but offer you the same help if you want to shoot me an email and talk about it offline.
Yeah, I'm also plugging here, fillout.com folks, an A+ integration partner of us, do some really advanced and complex things with forms. The capabilities are remarkable, and we have a tight integration with them. So please do check them out, fillout.com. Let's see, what have we missed here? So we've got about 4 minutes left. So I'll try to hit these last two. Christoph is asking, for real estate property management solutions, is there a way to publish iCal availabilities for records so they can update other platforms' websites? This is a nuanced one. Jeff, have you come across anything like this? Or Avi, Peter, want to jump in on this?
This would be a new one for me. I would need a little bit more context if I'm going to answer it effectively. From the other ones, I could gather kind of what you were looking for, but this one I'm unfamiliar with. Sorry.
Yeah, we'll have to circle back on that one, Christoph, unless Avi or Peter want to jump in here. Okay. And then Amy, I have 4 different projects to track, each one with specific line item deliverables and budget tracking. What templates would you recommend to start with?
Yeah, I recommend the project management, standard project management template that you'll see in the template gallery, and then just ensuring that you have the currency fields living in the right application, whether you want to track the overall allocated budget to the project, then the currency field would live in projects, or if you want to track the overall spend throughout the completion of the project, you probably want to organize tasks, or you want to organize the currency field at the task level to be able to clarify how much you've spent per task that you've done tied to each of those projects. But again, email me directly if you have particular questions on that one. I love solving those problems in case it's not completely obvious by my over answers.
Yeah, and just to share, again, left-hand side, template gallery, you're able to search core workflows, certain functions that y'all might be in, industry specific workflows, other workflows. But if there's one that you'd like to explore, like project management, even within project management, there's a number of options. So it sounds like in your case, just sticking to the core project management solution here is pretty robust. There's quite a bit that you can do with that. We'll call out, highly recommend you start with templates until you're super familiar with SmartSuite, but at any time you can start from scratch. And then coming soon is the ability to ask AI to generate, where you put in a line, build me a CRM for the automotive industry that tracks cars on currently being built, and you describe what you want, and within a minute, 2 minutes, it pulls that up. That is demoable if you all are curious to follow up after the fact. Our CEO did a webinar on this recently. So there's a lot of cool things coming between that, an AI assistant that helps you to analyze your data at scale across your whole SmartSuite solution. So some really cool things cooking on the AI front.
Last note, as far as the template gallery is concerned, we love the feedback. I think we probably called for feedback maybe 5 separate times throughout this one webinar, but we're constantly up leveling the template gallery that we have. So if you have ideas, which folks that I work with regularly always have ideas for creative templates that we can bring about and different modifications that we can put in place for current templates, if you have those ideas, email us directly. We love that. So yeah, thank you.
Sure. Last question, right up on time. Jessica, is the email integration, email within SmartSuite features still a work in progress, or should it be fully functional? It is fully functional. Of course, we're adding features to it, nuances to it, but yes, you have the ability to email records to email folks using, once you get into the communication center of SmartSuite, to be able to email out directly. Plenty more to cover there. Feel free, again, to reach out and we can walk you through those capabilities. Mail merge, not quite yet, Christoph, but there is a way to do that, which we can share. All right, we're up on time. The hour went fast. Thank you all for being so communicative. This has been great. And like I said, in any way that we can help you, just getting that first one up, I'll hit you again with that quote. Do not let perfect get in the way of better. You can do this. Enjoy the rest of your days. Take care.
Bye, y'all.